Hi everyone. This is the first video for my series Bash, where I will cover practically anything and everything about the programming language Bash, from the very basic features all the way to the advanced features. As I make these videos, my hope is that regardless of whether you're a beginner who has never programmed in your life before, or if you're an experienced programmer, you'll be able to follow these videos without having too much difficulty, but at the same time, you'll learn some useful stuff that you can actually apply in your real life. Now, I will say though that this video will be very different from the regular content that I will try to produce in the future. In the future, I will try to make more tutorial videos and more technical explanations of concepts, whereas this is a motivational content to mostly get you interested in Bash. So I will talk about what Bash is and why you might want to learn it. Let's get right to it. So consider a scenario where you want to create a folder called folder 1. How would you actually do this? Most of us probably will use what's called a graphical user interface, which just means that you will use your mouse and click buttons that are on the screen to do things. So in this case, what we would do is we would click a button called New Folder somewhere, and it would pop open a little window where we can type folder 1, specifying that we want a folder called folder 1, and that's it. Your computer will create that folder for you. So that's what we see as users. We click a button, we type something, and the computer essentially just creates the folder for us. But what actually happens behind the scene is that our action of clicking and typing gets translated into a form that the computer can actually understand. So the GUI, the graphical user interface, translates our actions into some command that tells your computer to actually create that folder. So it's really a two-step process. And what's another way to do this? The other way to do this is by using a CLI, what's known as the command line interface. The idea of the command line interface is to write commands that are closer to what the computer can understand. So instead of going through the GUI and clicking buttons, which then get translated into something your computer understands, the idea behind the command line is to more directly communicate with your computer by providing them with commands that they can understand more easily. So there are less translations, which means less steps, so it's more direct and therefore more efficient for your computer. So everything you do with the command line interface happens in applications that are usually called terminal. You go to terminal and you write stuff in a programming language called Bash. Bash is just one of many programming languages that you can use to interact with the command line. Some other popular examples are KSH that you see on the screen, which stands for Corn Shell, and also ZSH, which is Z Shell. So if there are so many different languages that you can use, why Bash? Why are we learning about Bash specifically? Well, Bash is pretty standard and universal. What that means is if you run across a random computer, it will most likely have Bash installed. If you come across a random developer, they will probably know Bash. In short, it's practical. Another reason why Bash might be cool has to do with this idea of a glue, like a glue code. And to understand that, let's again consider a scenario. You have an image, a JPEG file, which you would like to make into a black and white photo, and you want it cropped. One way to do this is to write your own code, to write your own program that does the black and white filtering and cropping. This means that you're going to write this program from scratch, from start to finish. There are pros and cons to this, but oftentimes it's a bad idea because it takes a lot of time, takes a lot of effort, and it's just unnecessary because cropping and black and white filtering are such common tasks that people do that there are probably tools out there for you that will do it for you, so you don't have to write your own code to do it. So a more sensible approach might be something like this. You go out into the internet and download a cropper that crops your image. And you also find a tool that turns your image into a black and white image. Then what happens is that the cropper that you found will crop the image into a colored but cropped image, and then the black and white tool is going to take that colored and cropped image into a black and white and cropped image. So as you can see, we're barely doing any work. We're not really making the cropper, and we're not making the black and white tool either. We downloaded them both from the internet. But the work is not done. We have to string those tools together to do what we want. So we need to know how to pass the original image to the cropper, and we need to know how to pass the result of the cropper to the black and white tool to get our final result. And this is what Bash excels at. Bash was designed for and is great at stringing together various different tools that already exist. So all you need to do is combine them in a way that helps you accomplish your own unique tasks without really reinventing the tools themselves. But if you do want to learn about how to make the fastest cropper or fastest black and white converter, you might want to learn languages like C++ or Rust, and I will eventually talk about those languages in this channel, but just not right now. Here's another reason why you might want to learn Bash, is that it makes you productive. Let's go back to this diagram from earlier, where your button clicks get translated by the GUI into some command that your computer can understand. And let's say you want to, or your boss tells you to make 1,000 folders. You want folders named D1, D2, D3, all the way up to D1000. So 1,000 folders. Now let's ask ourselves, do we want to do this using the GUI approach of clicking buttons to create folders? I mean, you can, but you probably don't want to. You don't want to click buttons 1,000 times and name D1, D2, D3. What you want to do is you want to go to the command line and be able to say things like, please create these 1,000 folders for me. Do the work for me, please. And how do you actually do this? Well, Bash. That's why you want to learn Bash. And the last reason comes from my personal experience. I majored in computer science when I was in college, and there were times in my 4 years when my classmates and I were working on projects together and we really needed some Bash. Some Bash would have really made our lives easier. Thankfully, I had already learned Bash way before any of this happened, so my classmates and I took half or much less time than other groups did because I was able to do things with Bash that other teams might have had to do it by hand. And it's for this reason that I always recommend people going into programming to learn Bash early, because chances are, if you're programming, inevitably you will have to learn Bash at some point. When the time actually comes that you need it, you will either already know Bash and will be able to be more productive and spend less time doing stuff, or you'll have to learn it on the spot, which will probably take much longer and delay your process. And that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time with some more technical content.